an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Wall of Storms, chapters 51 and 52, A Trap and The Marshal's Decision. In these chapters, Kuni finds out why Gin is better at the job than him. It costs a really high price, though, and nobody wants to fucking listen to Zomi. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Kyle for commissioning this episode. So, these chapters. First of all, the first of the two chapters starts off with Zomi's father and Luan both dying, which is just really mean-spirited of this author. Like, what happened to you the week that you wrote this chapter, sir? What was going on that you were like, you know what I need to do? I need to really fuck up one of my main characters. And Oga Kidosu his like last words are basically that he's proud of her and he's glad to have seen her one last time. And it is heart-wrenching. And Luan Zia, his final words, of course, her father has a half-formed sentence. Luan Zia's out here writing fucking poetry up until the very last. This is how this goes. Weigh the fish, the universe is knowable. A Kruben breaches, the remora detaches. Mewling child, cooing parent. Grand-souled companions, brothers, wakeful weakness. Empathy that encompasses the world. To imagine new machines, to see unknown lands, to believe the grace of kings belongs to all. Grateful. This was a summary of his life, the ultimate call of the wild goose departing the pond. And Zomi is just absolutely wrecked, understandably. Luan's notes that he took, everybody kind of thinks do you think we should give that to the king? But she's just fucking gripping onto it. And everybody sort of realizes all right, why don't we just let her keep that? Which I really appreciated. Oga Kidosu's and Luan Zia's bodies rested in the grand audience hall. After a suitable mourning period, Zomi would take both for burial in their hometowns in Dasu and Han. Given the state of the war, however, that might take some time. This is something that I, have never personally dealt with, is having to get a body somewhere where somebody dies in a place that is not where they live or where they would want to be buried. And also the delay. This is something that a lot of people these days are dealing with because of the coronavirus. And actually, in that regard, I do have some experience. Owen's father passed away about 3 weeks ago now. And it turns out that he was not infected, but they didn't know that. And they didn't want to release the body until the tests returned. And it was, taking 2 weeks for test results to come back. So finally, they have found that he was not positive, and we are going to be burying him next week. But that's a full month before, and it was just due to this virus, slowing everything way down and changing the way that we handle everything. And the idea that these guys, they're going to keep them somewhere to be buried at some point when the war is over it's such a frustrating thing when you are, and I'm sure that like Zomi does not begrudge this, but personally, when you have like a terrible loss of somebody who means a lot to you, you want to like be able to have your moment of closure, and for it to be delayed indefinitely is really tough. Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, well, I can't bury them right away, but I'm going home in 2 weeks and I'm taking them with me. It's a delay, but there is a date set. You have a finish line in sight that you are aware of, and it's just a different whole vibe because it almost helps with closure in that case, because you have a period in which you can mourn before they are in the ground. If it's just hanging around, not sure when you get to go home with them, if ever, who knows how long down the line it'll be before she can bury her father and bury Luancia. Like, you know, I don't know that it would tear open the wounds again, but I feel like it would be really hard. It would just be emotionally really draining. So, you know, this is just one of those things that like dealing with the logistics of death is a really frustrating thing for me to read about or hear about, because I don't really personally understand the importance that it has for people. I understand it theoretically that, like, for example, my father passed away. He's buried in Connecticut, and part of his wife not wanting to move away was because she wanted to be near his grave. Now, to me, he's gone. He's not there. The grave, it doesn't hold a ton of meaning to me. So while I understand in theory wanting to be near, there's a big part of me that's kind of like, yikes, though. You can't just stay anchored because there's a body somewhere. Like, you know, she did wind up moving away. But so for me, when I read this sort of thing and it's like, oh yeah, who knows how many months we're just going to have to wait to bury him. Just bury him there. I'm sure he doesn't care. I'm sure it's fine. But it's not for him. It's not about whether he cares, you know? And that's just the hardest thing for me to keep in mind, is that all of that stuff, as much as we say it's for the person, it's not at all. It's for everyone who's left. And it's difficult for me to kind of have that like tact when talking about it with people or dealing with people who are going through that, because it's not like I'm not trying to say that a body would hold no meaning even after the person has died, because of course it's still going to like matter to you, but within a limitation. I feel like I could detach myself from that somewhat easily once somebody is really gone. But maybe I just haven't been put to the test enough. Maybe, I don't know, you know? Anyway, we have this like little chat between the gods, where they're talking about like, Luanzia, why didn't you whisk the body of your protege away the way we took the bodies of our favorites away, in their moments of apotheosis? Luan has always believed the universe is knowable. Making the moment of his death a mystery would be wrong. You have strange ideas for how to honor the mortals, Lutho. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship with the mortals. We may not have encountered the Liuku gods, but have you not noticed how they're starting to pray to us, giving us the names of their gods? Do you feel honored or dishonored? Interesting question. We don't get an answer. That section ends there. So then we go to Zomi and Thankaru Kono debating sending Kuni to Ryu. Is it Ryu or Rui? Sorry, I'm trying to look. Rui, I think. And essentially, Zomi feels that they are rushing into things, that Peku Tenryo is smart, and if it looks like he's retreating, it's very unlikely what it looks like, and that maybe we should check into exactly what the fuck is actually happening and give it some time before we just go running headfirst into a fucking dragon's den. But Karukono is like, Tenryo is, they're disorganized right now. They're fleeing. We should strike while the iron's hot. And if the emperor shows up, it's going to rally everybody and they're going to be really like energized to have him there. And it says that Zomi understood, really the thing was that Fan Karukono is afraid that Tenryo is going to do something to Prince Timu if they wait too long, and he will be blamed for it. And if he gets Kuni into the mix early enough, any decision that would potentially lead to Timu being hurt would be Kuni's decision, and therefore not his own responsibility. And it's a sort of like, it's a sort of situation where, as much as there's a part of me that feels like, oh, coward, I can really understand not wanting the death of a kid on your head, whether it's a prince, whether that's the child of the king or not. I can understand kind of being like, I don't want to have to take credit for this. But also, that's his fucking job, is to like command and put people's lives at risk. So, and meanwhile, Munkakri is in concert with Zomi. Like, Munkakri basically is like, you should listen to her. Why are you guys just discounting what she said? Gia, meanwhile, Timu is her kid. She is wanting to go in there fucking guns blazing. Gia has no interest in this caution that everybody is preaching. And it says the idea that Moon might be hoping to prolong the war to increase his own influence flashed through her mind. I really like that even in these times where we know that the thinking here is correct, that the suspicions here are correct, we still get to see Gia being the extremely suspicious conniver that she is. She can't help it. And so she sees everyone else that way as well. And granted, you shouldn't be in politics if you don't see everyone else that way. That's part of how it's supposed to go, is you make sure that you are aware of the potential moves other people could make so that you don't get blindsided. But it's just a hell of a reminder to see her like in this moment, as worried as she is about her child, as much is on the line as there is, she's still fucking like, oh, really? Interesting that you said that. I wonder what that's about. What did you mean by that? And it's just like, oh, girl, not now. Can't you just not for like a second? And he says, the marshal taught us that there's a time for acting and a time for waiting. And Kuni's like, well, I'm not the marshal, and the marshal's not fighting this war. And I'm like, she sure fucking isn't. Where's she at? I'm so happy by the way this goes, but we'll get there. So Emperor Reagan, I hate saying that, but it's like Ragan sounds so weird. I don't know. Arrived in Krifi with General Munkakri and a reinforcement of 10,000 men. As the Ryukyu did not trust their own airship crews, mostly manned by surrendered Imperials, not to defect, they grounded the airships they had been using as scouts. Since the Ryukyu also didn't have the training or skill to field large fleets of battle airships, they scuttled all the ships at the Mount Kiji Air Base during their retreat rather than letting them fall into Imperial hands. It would take a long time to construct more. The airships that accompanied the Emperor here were the very last ones in Dara. So, they do these raids. The Ryukyu's, it has the Garinifins who fly up and deal with them, but then they have to like land and kind of rest. And they're doing this all while retreating, the whole thing. And eventually their assumption here is that they are trying to retreat back to their city ships and get on board and get the fuck out. And Kuni is like, we have to stop him before he can reach the coast, because his thought is that they are going to retreat to Dasu. I was thinking, well, if they're retreating, just let them fucking retreat. If you think that's, like, obviously I know there's no way Peku Tenryo is retreating. But if you are operating under the assumption that they are retreating, just let them go then. What, like, you know, you chase them, sure. But when Kuni says we have to stop him before he can reach the coast, I was kind of like, what? And then I realized, like, oh no, there are so many islands here. They're retreating from this one island. This is not a retreat in the grand sense at all. So Zomi Kidosu elected to join the riders of Thankaru Kono. The winter weather made her leg harness stiff and made walking more difficult, and riding a horse gave her more mobility. Ugh, I'm having trouble talking today. She took advantage of the opportunity to ride away from the cavalry brigade and observe the distant aerial dance of Garinafins against airships. Although Luanzia had taken detailed notes of the creatures, she reminded herself that there was no substitute for direct observation, for weighing the fish. So they have been fighting each other enough that they're sort of getting a handle on their tactics. And Zomi, meanwhile, is like really like paying a lot of attention and doing the exact thing that Luanzia essentially tasked her with as he died, which is basically pay attention, take notes, because she is certain that there is going to be a weak spot somewhere with these Garinafins. And I think everyone else feels they've already found the weak spot, in that the Garinafins need rest. And so all of them are sort of like, yeah, that's it. So we just need, you know, they aren't machines that can go, and they think that's it. But obviously Zomi feels there's got to be something else that they're missing. And it says, occasionally, some of the civilians managed to escape the Ryukyu army and ran to Thankaru Kono's riders for protection. There were far fewer of these escaped villagers than Karu Kono would have expected, and questioning of the escapees revealed that this was due to the Desichief system set up by the traitor Ra-Olu. I am so curious about Ra-Olu. I kept thinking that Ra-Olu is like not the traitor he seems like. But the longer we go on, he hasn't shifted positions visibly that I can tell at all. So I guess Ra-Olu is just as much of a piece of shit as he looked like. I was so hopeful that wasn't going to turn out to be true. I don't know why I had such faith. I don't know the guy. But yeah, they, you know, if they run away, the family that they leave behind is going to pay the price for their escape, and they aren't willing to inflict that on anybody else, which, yeah, that would be a pretty big deterrent for me as well. So Zomi is getting these escapees and questioning them all about the Garinafins. How many people does it take to feed and care for them? How much do they eat? And like, how many hours do they have to rest a day? What are their favorite things to eat? How often do they shit? And when they shit, what does it look like? Which I really wonder what that is about. I'm dying to know why she specifically wants to know that. I'm operating under the assumption there is no specific reason, and she's just collecting as much information as she possibly can, which is legit. Honestly, you should ask every question, because you have no idea going in what question is going to be the relevant question until you ask it. But I wonder if there was something particular that she had an eye on here. And I love that Thankaru Kono is like, why are you asking all these questions? And it just says Zomi Kidosu shook her head. I bet she did. These fucking simple ass motherfuckers. Kids, I know that I need to accept that there are going to be people who don't see the big picture, who don't use their heads entirely. I'm not even talking about people who are simply less smart. You know, that's a different thing. I'm talking about people who don't put in the mental effort to interrogate subjects. I just get so mad about it. Like, think, you idiot. These are the main weapon of your enemy. You should be asking these questions. She shouldn't even be having to do this. You should have been doing it already. What are you doing? So, we have this whole thing with this this tunnel and the pass. The Liuku army and the abducted villagers had to go through Naza Pass. It was at the narrow end of a funnel-shaped valley. And there was a secret tunnel that was from Dasu to Rui, dug by Ginmazoti, that had terminated. As the tunnel had been dug only for military use, it was not suitable for commercial exploitation without significant investment, and Kunigaru wisely thought taking up a hated project initiated by the tyrant Mapidere would not have appealed to his subjects. The tunnel was thus soon abandoned, and over time, the crater from which Ginmazoti's forces had emerged had been filled back in by loose stones. Few even remembered its existence, except for old veterans who had fought under Marshal Mazzotti in the early days. The valley narrowed as one moved west, and by the time it reached Naza Pass, the hills had pressed in until only about 100 yards separated them. General Than Karukono's riders managed to get to the pass ahead of the retreating Liuku by several days, which was plenty of time to build up impressive fortifications with stones and fallen trees. So Karukono really feels like he did something here. And Zomi, for her part, is like, what's the deal here? The Garinafins should have found us. Like, our airships, no offense, are no match for these fucking things. And we've kind of been like out and about. Like, granted, the army on foot couldn't have caught us, but they could definitely find us. And she says, it's like they were putting on a show. Not a single patrol has come anywhere near us. It was as if they wanted to be sure that we could see that the Garinafins were fooled by these airships, even though it made no sense for them to be flying away from General Kakri's main army. I think they might already know we're here. And again, she's like suggesting it's all very logical, and yet this dude does not want to hear it because he is so set on his path of how this is going to be handled that he can't like absorb any information that does not fit within this narrow idea that he has in his head. He tries to say like, well, maybe the Garinafins were tired because they've been harassing the airships, like you said. And she's like, those aren't the same ones. There are at least 3 different groups. And I love that her taking notes and drawing them. That's like those kinds of observations. I'm sure to the untrained eye, one Garinafin looks very similar to another. I'm like, short aside, when I worked on the goat farm in Connecticut, and I will never forget the first day there were about 40 goats, and the owner of the farm was introducing me to all his goats, and he was able to name every single solitary one. And at the time, the only way that I could tell them apart was if they were different colors. Other than that, there was no way to know. And I didn't grasp how he was able to tell exactly which one was which when there were that many. It's one thing if there's like 15 or 20, but 40 and you still know each and everyone's name? And then after working there for maybe 2 weeks, I fucking knew every single one of those damn goats' names, and they looked nothing alike to me. They were like, it was sort of okay, these two are both black and white, but look at their faces. They have totally different faces. And it was like when I started to realize that I had shifted over and they didn't look alike to me anymore, it really put into perspective like how that can work, that how becoming familiar with a thing makes things much more distinctive. So I like to think that Zomi has sort of undergone that same transformation, that she's like been observing these things so closely, so often, for so long now, that to her, it's almost like, those aren't the same two groups, you idiot. Like, to her, it's so obvious that having to tell him this information, which again, that should be very important. If they are doing what I had said earlier, and basically operating under the assumption that the only weakness that these Gariniffins have is the fact that they need to rest, they should absolutely be keeping track of the Gariniffins themselves to be able to tell if these are the ones that need rest or the ones that have been resting. That seems pretty fucking key to being able to manage these things. But evidently, Zomi's the only one with a goddamn brain in her head. You think of everything as a plot within a plot within a plot. You'll never commit to doing anything. If we think of the barbarians as all-knowing, then why bother fighting? Oh, God. This dude is such a Facebook commenter. Like, I had this happen, actually, just yesterday. I got in a real fucking argument with somebody who, essentially, me saying, abolish the police, they came at me with, if you say things that are that radical, they'll never happen because it's not a winnable slogan, because it scares people off. And saying shit like that is what's going to get Trump elected. And this was somebody who fucking knows me and should know better. And the idea that I'm not allowed to say that this thing should happen, or else it means, oh, I guess we're just going to give up completely. It's so insulting and so completely misrepresenting my position. So when he says this to her, I just got real fucking rankled by it, because it felt like that exact same thing over again. Is, you know, she's questioning the judgment that he is using to take these measures, not whether or not these people are all knowing. She's saying you aren't paying attention, but he can't even fucking consider that anyone would ever think that of him. So rather than hearing, hey, maybe you need to pay more attention, all he hears is, well, these people are practically supernatural, and I guess we're just destined to it's like, that's so not what she was saying, dude. And the fact that you can't hear anything but that sounds like a you problem. You need to figure that out. So Zomi just basically, after he like kind of shuts her down, she realizes that he isn't going to listen to her because she doesn't have an actual theory on what's going on here. All she can say is, I don't think that's right. But when he's like, okay, then what do you think's happening? She has no answer for him. So she's kind of in this position where, as much as she's right in that these are not the smart moves to make, the alternative would be doing simply nothing. It's not even, oh, here's an alternate plan of things we could do. The alternate plan is wait and see. And nobody wants to hear that right now. So she knows that, you know, she's not an idiot. So she just decides to shut up, but she's definitely concerned about it. So the army comes into view, and there are thousands of refugees that are being herded ahead of them. And they're carrying all of the supplies and everything for the army. And Zomi says, what if they drive the civilians at us? And, you know, granted, this is something that definitely has been done in the past. And Karu Kono is just basically like, if they do, we have to do what we have to do. And she's like, these are our people. Are you serious? And he's just like, I don't know what to tell you. But then Karu Kono is like, haha, the Emperor's troops entered the valley. They're trapped. I'm like, they're not trapped. There's no way Karu Kono or not Tenkara Kono, there's no way that Pekyu Tenryo makes this mistake. I'm just like, all right, what the fuck is going on? So we have Kunigaru, and he is meeting with Pekyu Tenryo for the first time. Kuni, I love the detail that he's just like old and tired. He feels ancient, and it's just like, God, we have done this so many fucking times. I am so sick of these wars and these meetings and wondering if like hundreds and thousands of people are going to be fucking murdered because of shit I did. He is just really over it. And Pekyu comes in here. He says that he isn't going to apologize for trying to seek a better life for his people, which like Kuni kind of even thinks is a little bit like admirable. And Kuni's like, all right, your path to the sea is blocked. We outnumber you. There's no way that you guys are getting out of this. You have to negotiate. And Tenryo's like, all right, let's say we negotiate. What do you got? And Kuni's like, we'll let you get on your ships after you slaughter all of your Garinafins, and we'll let you leave. And he's like, that's not really what I'm after, though. That doesn't help me get a better life for my people. And he pulls Timu to the front of the room at sword point. And Timu is really being a fucking gangster. He is not scared. And you know what? I bet he's scared as shit. But he keeps saying that he is not afraid and holds his shit together like a goddamn champ. Timu, I'm sorry I was shitting on you, buddy. You aren't that smart, and that's fair. But you've got a great heart, and good for you. And I hope that you get put in a position where that heart gets made use of without you getting too tripped up by the fact that you trust too easily and don't think things through totally. But maybe he has started to think things through more. Maybe he is better about it after this fucking trial than he was. Nothing to make you change the way you treat other people and the world, like going through some fucking trauma. So Tenryo basically, it's a face-off where Kuni is like, you can't, if you harm my son, I will make sure that none of that deal we talked about happens. You're not getting the fuck out of here alive. And Timu's yelling like, father, don't give in. I'm just one kid. Everybody else will die because of me. No, no, no. And I love this moment. Something about the confidence of Tenryo bothered him. Kuni was a good gambler, and he could tell when someone was just bluffing in a game of cards. But Tenryo's smile, it was different. And then came the rumbling behind him. The crater in the village of Fada, long neglected and forgotten, erupted. These people are able to torture as much information out of folks as they need. Of course they were going to find out about this. And it's really so frustrating. And it's so frustrating that Kuni did not think about this. But also, it's been how many decades now since that whole thing went down? And he has no reason to think these people know about it. I can't even be that mad at him because why would you worry about this as a factor? Why would this even enter your mind that not only that he would know about it, but that it would still even be usable after all this time? And I guess that's why everybody had sort of disappeared, is because they were busy probably digging that shit back up again. And so, why there was very little activity from them in the way that everybody had sort of expected. So let's see. Ms. T says, oh, Ragan reminds me of Raga from Broken Earth. Yeah, fair. They should have thought of it as a tool to use against the invaders, though. But that's what I mean is if they were thinking about it at all, they should have anticipated this. But obviously, the memory of this tunnel in total, not just for the risk of it, but the memory of the tunnel completely has apparently slipped Kunigaru's mind. There's a bug on my microphone. Don't care for that. Which, I don't know how you forget something that massive. It's a tunnel to the island next door. That's a big deal. So how he forgot about it, I don't really get. But apparently he did. And that's part of why I'm asking, like, how many decades has it been? Because I feel like forgetting about this thing doesn't make sense. And then I'm like, yeah, but there's been a lot going on, so maybe it totally does. I can't decide how I feel about it. Kyle says, I think it's been around 20 years. I was 15. I don't know. I still remember things pretty fucking clearly from when I was 15. I feel like that's not enough time to excuse forgetting about it. I don't know. You know? I feel like this is just a real big fuck up. And like, it is a big fuck up. Kuni knows that because later on he's talking to Gin and he's just like, I'm real bad at this. And also, Gin's the one that dug that tunnel. And if they had, like, really gotten her to be in charge, she would have remembered that shit, I bet. I don't think Gin would have let this slide. But here we are. So, while Tom Vanaki had directed her Garinafins to put on a dazzling show against the Imperial airships and kept them occupied. Oh my god, guys. I just keep getting, like, little... Now that I saw a bug on my microphone, I keep thinking there's bugs on me. Do you have that? You see a bug and all of a sudden you just like feel tickles? Ugh, I hate that feeling. She had also dispatched a few of the Garinafin carrying city ships to the coast of Dasu. From there, they had secretly moved through the tunnel under the sea back to Rui. Tanvanaki, inspired by the lessons learned from the surprise landing by the mechanical Krubins and the lore she learned from surrendered Imperial veterans, had come up with her own way to take advantage of underwater attack vectors. Liuku reinforcements had come to Rui from under the sea, using tunnels that Kuni himself had once used to conquer Rui from Dasu. And Pekyu Tenryo is really fucking high on himself in this moment, which, like, I mean, you would be. And he is just so mad at himself. Kunigaru realizes that, like, the lure of Pekyu Tenryo and the lure of his son, he just totally, like, fell for that bait. And he feels like a real schmuck. And you know what? He kind of should. That's fair. And Zomi, meanwhile, as she's realizing what's going on, is losing her mind and so mad that she didn't see it either. So Munkakri comes up to Kuni and is just like, yeah, we still outnumber them, but the narrowness of this valley, kind of like with them coming in here, sort of makes that not even necessarily as much of an advantage as it was. And now they've got tons of Garinafins in the air. It's kind of done. And I love this. Kuni knew that Munkakri was trying to spare his feelings by not mentioning the biggest disadvantage of all. He was here. In fact, he had become the Pekyu's hostage. So basically they're like, we need to get you out of here. You're the king. You go down, that's it. It's a wrap. So you need to turn your little ass around and get on one of these airships and leave the fuck this whole mess behind you. And Kuni is looking at Timu like, I can't do that. And Timu, again, like a fucking champ, is just like, dude, go. I know what's happening. I'm not an idiot. Get out. And I'm like, Timu, you're so good. And Munkakri tells, Kuni tells Munkakri to fight only as long as you must to allow my ship to escape. But don't just waste your time fighting a battle that's lost. And when Munkukri is like, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. Kuni like grabs him and is like, no, seriously, please just do what I'm asking you right now. And Munkukri gets serious for a minute and is like, man, I have known that there was a day like this coming for me since I joined up with you decades ago. I'm lucky that I made it this long. And frankly, I'm not upset about it. So, maybe I'll come out on the other side of this, but I doubt it, and that's fine. So make sure you take care of my family, and maybe I get to go see the hegemon and yell at him a little bit, which is fun. So, just as Kuni was about to start climbing into the airship, Pekyu Tenryo shouted across the field, Emperor Ragen, we've barely gotten to know each other. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Don't you want to see what entertainment I've planned for you? And Munkukri, rightfully, is like, no. Don't you turn around. Don't you do it. No. Get on the ship. Get on. What did I just say? But Kuni is like, I am the king. I am making this choice. I need to carry the consequences of that choice. I have to face what the fuck I am sentencing people to do, to what I am sentencing them to by doing this thing. So there is a group of 100 totally innocent civilians, and one of them is Zomi's mother. This bitch has been through it, okay? So unfair. And she's looking at her mom like, my mom lives in Dasu. What is she doing here? How is this happening? And it says, then she understood. Zomi had used the money she gained as an important advisor to Queen Gin to build her mother a big house and hire her servants, thinking that it would allow her to live a life of leisure. But her mother had not enjoyed the way all the other villagers now came to ask her for money, and how all her friends now no longer saw her as one of them. She had not complained to Zomi, knowing that her daughter meant well, but she had told Zomi that she was thinking of leaving Dasu to visit distant relatives in Rui. After that, Zomi had been so busy with work that she had not even realized that it meant that her mother was in Rui at the moment of the invasion. That's a really interesting detail that, considering everything that's going on in this section, doesn't need to be there, like, in terms of sheer plot. But I love that little, like, moment of seeing what it is like for somebody to come up in the world and be uncomfortable with that. Rather than, like, living the life, they value the friendships they already had, and those are changing because their circumstances are changing. And that's a real thing. If a big way that you related to the world and formed relationships and bonds with other people is rooted in poverty and the shared experience of poverty, if you suddenly aren't experiencing poverty anymore, what do you got? That's hard. I personally, just doing better financially from the podcast over this past year and a half, there have been moments where I haven't said things to my friends that I would normally say because I feel weird about exposing the fact that I am not struggling the way that I was, and worrying that they're going to see me differently now because I'm not in that same situation anymore, which I guarantee is not the case, but it's there, So at this point, Pekyu Tenryo is just like, hey, if you're going to leave, I guess I better just do this then. And he lights everybody on fire. And Kuni watches it and deals with it, I guess. By dealing with it, I mean, he falls from the ladder and screams. It's awful. It's really bad. And The scene before her was incomprehensible. Her mother burning, her mother dying. She had promised to give her mother a better life, and this was what she had done. So she's blaming herself because in her mind, her mother wouldn't even be in Rui if Zomi hadn't sent a bunch of money and made her uncomfortable where she was. Which, of course, this is so not Zomi's fault. But our brains don't really care about whether something makes sense or not. It's really not high on our list of concerns when we get upset and guilty. So Kuni struck the ground and Munkakri's arms softened the fall. The emperor's lips moved, but he could not find the words. Some Liuku soldiers came forward and unceremoniously smothered the smoldering embers with bags of earth. About 100 more civilians were driven forward to stand out on the crematorium over this field of slaughter. They screamed and resisted, but the Liuku soldiers were relentless and shackled them to the stakes driven in the ground. Then the Liuku warriors retreated, and the Garinifin put its head near the ground again. Emperor, order your soldiers to drop their weapons and your airships to land and stop resisting. All your airships. Munkakri gave the order for his men to attack, but they stood rooted to the ground, too shocked to move. The old general, eyes blood-red with fury, pushed straight at Tenryo himself by running through the huddled crowd. And he gets burned up. He gets burned all up. And I felt a little bad for being so mad at him earlier, but honestly, I still am. So... And it says, behind him, another 100 flame pillars replaced 100 lives. And he calmly ordered the soldiers of Dara to drop their weapons. You should have left, Renga, said Defiro Miro. If I leave, I don't deserve to be Emperor of Dara, said Kuni. He ordered Grace of Kings and all the other airships to land. So, that's rough. That's rough, buddy. And then we go into chapter 52. I only have 7 minutes left. But honestly, there's not a lot to this chapter that I feel is super necessary to go over. Because what it comes down to mostly is that Gia is brought quite low. And has decided that she is willing to admit that she falsely accused everybody, or at least Gin specifically. She has a moment beforehand. Let's see. The safety of the Emperor and Prince Timu is paramount, said Kogo. Surrendering Dara to the Liuku is not what father would want, countered Prince Firo. And they get in a really kind of nasty fight, and Kogo is just like, you know what? You're letting your fear drive you, and we can't be doing this bullshit because some kid is pissed off. And honestly, I kind of wanted to stand up and applaud. And it says that Gia goes and speaks to Soto. And she asks about, basically, why is the world so unfair? And she asks, what did you think about the story of Queen Thozu? Guys, am I supposed to remember this story? Because I do not. And I feel bad about it, but I couldn't remember it. I don't understand how Ologa was able to turn the people against her. The queen was waiting for her husband to return, so of course she was doing the right thing to say no to all the suitors. Why would anyone believe Ologa's lies? It's because everyone thought the king was dead. He had been away at war for 10 years while most of the other warriors had returned. They thought Queen Thozu was a widow, which was why all the suitors were at the castle. They couldn't understand why she wouldn't marry any of them. And basically what it comes down to is that Oluga hinted to the people that she wanted to hold on to the power of being regent because she enjoyed it. And in that way, Ologa ruined her reputation. He accused her of being ambitious. Is being ambitious bad? Many men think that's a bad thing in a woman. So, yeah, that is a particularly, like, women are really not meant to be ambitious. As soon as we show any bit of ambition, we are called snakes, two-faced, you know. And granted, there are people out there who are genuinely two-faced snakes, but it takes so much less for a woman to be called that than anyone else. So Gia is essentially like, I need to fucking debase myself, don't I? Why must I choose to stain my name? And why do the gods mock us so? And she goes and begs Gin, even if I tell them, what if I announce to everyone that you were falsely accused? And Gin is a little startled, but not like super impressed. She says, no, if you clear my name now at the cost of your own, Dara will be thrown into chaos, and in any event, I see no chance of victory. Pecutenrio is a worthy opponent, and now he has all the advantages on the board. I can't think of a way to defeat the Liku and save the Emperor and the Prince. And Gia is like, what if you don't have to do that part? I know that you don't trust me, but I am willing to set aside the people that I love to make sure that Dara is okay. I know that you have thought this whole time that what I've been trying to do is gain power for myself. But what I am trying to do is make Dara better. And this feels to me like Gia definitely does want power, but she is taking advantage of that like moment in that story and trying to clear the idea of ambition out of Gin's head. So Gin says that she's like, you know, underestimated her, but she's still not going to do it because she doesn't think there's any hope. And Aya, her daughter, is talking to her a little bit later. And this is an interesting, she sees this book that has a message written from Luan in it. It is only when one is away from home that one can see its beauty. Gin, my beloved, see you on the other side. And Gin says to her daughter that this was written by your father. And Aya stops and is like, I'm sorry, what? You told me you didn't know who my father was. And understandably is quite upset and leaves the room. And Zomi is like, is there any chance that you were going to change your mind here? Like, I really think that we can find some kind of weakness in these things. And Gin says, the young are always so hopeful. To which I think it's a reasonable question. Zomi's like, so what? Have you just like given up? What do you think? I think there's a time to fight and a time to yield, is basically what she says. But what it comes down to a little bit later, I love it too that it's Lady Soto. Lady Soto comes at Gin and is like, would you like some of this pufferfish soup that maybe has a tiny bit of poison in it? But you know, it was slaughtered fine, so it's not really but like it might have a little bit of poison, but you know, whatever. And Gin says that she doesn't think tempting fate that way makes any sense. And Soto's like, oh, so are you a coward? And Gin's like, what are you doing? Do you think I don't see that you're trying to bait me? What the fuck? And she says that everyone who fought me knows I'm not afraid to die, but I also don't believe in throwing away the lives of soldiers under my command uselessly. And Soto calls her arrogant. And Gin is like, what do you mean? And she basically has Gin come with her and meet a bunch of the men who have gathered who want to, or not even just the men, because there are women mixed in here as well, But there are all of these people gathered together who have basically determined that they would rather die fighting than die slaves. Which, it really is something that Gin hasn't occurred to her that people would feel this way. Like, Gin, I get that you think that people, like, and they probably, many would be kept as slaves, but many would also be killed first. And what do you think they'd do with you, girl? Like, she's just, you know, she's going into this acting like, well, I might just die. And I'm like, I think that's like a optimistic outcome. I feel like it could be way worse than that, girl. You don't know. And Soto turns to all the people and is like, hey, so do you want to run and save your own lives or hide or be enslaved? Is that what you want? And everybody's like, I want to fight. And Soto's like, now, reminder, fighting you will probably die and you probably will not win. And they're like, yeah, no, we know, we're fine with that. And Gin says, why do you want to fight even though you know defeat is almost certain? It is more important to die free than to live as slaves, said Kano Tho of Arulugi. The Emperor may have pardoned my act of rebellion, but I will not be able to lift my head in front of Princess Kikomi on the other shore of the river on which nothing floats if I did otherwise. And everybody has their reasons. They're, you know, people who inspired them, family that inspires them. And I really enjoyed everybody sort of giving their reasoning. I won't go through all of them because I don't have time left. But they give Gin the sword. And I forgot the name of the sword. It means something like no remaining doubt or something like that. And it says, it isn't the achievement of victory that makes a leader noble, but the willingness to fight for what is right in her heart, even when defeat is certain. Fithoweo, oh right, it's Fithoweo, is the god of not just victors, but also those who fall for a just cause. I wish I had the names of the gods memorized. I just can't. Insist on seeing even when all around you is darkness. And the underlined 72 times is the line, true courage comes not from being certain and unafraid, but from doing what must be done even while being terrified and full of doubts. And she raises the sword above her head and they chant, fight, fight, fight. And that is the end of the chapter. So, all right. Kyle says, you're past the point now where the characters list in the front will spoil anything. Oh, I forgot that was even there. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, I'll do that next time. All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much for listening. Thank you, Kyle, again for commissioning this book. And I hope you've been enjoying the coverage. And I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.